Not every pitch got a deal, and some of the biggest Shark Tank successes actually walked away empty-handed. These are the products the sharks wish they'd invested in because today, they're worth millions. 1 Chef Big Shake. To the world, he might be Chef Big Shake, but in Season 2 of Shark Tank, he presented himself as Sean Davis, an aspiring entrepreneur. Sean entered the tank with his flagship product for CBS Foods, the shrimp burger. To date, he'd sold approximately 22,000 units and made over $30,000. Now, he wanted the sharks to come on board as he expanded CBS Foods' shrimp burger into every supermarket in the country. The sharks got a tasty treat, and they loved it enough for a second bite. However, not enough to give Sean what he'd hoped for. Something bigger than praise. $200,000 for a 25% equity stake. Mark Cuban told Sean he'd become a loyal customer but wouldn't be open to investing. The other sharks agreed. Sean walked out with a few half-eaten shrimp burgers, but he woke up the next day to viral sales. That's right, the flagship product skyrocketed in sales overnight, becoming a viral sensation. The increase in sales was in part due to a group of angel investors who saw Davis's segment on Shark Tank. They were so impressed that they offered him $500,000 for an unknown equity amount. Within a year, the product found itself in every grocery store on the East Coast. Sean can brag about the shrimp burger, but CBS Foods did eventually close down. The silver lining would be the millions he made in the process, though. 2 Neuter. You've seen this product everywhere. Every grocery store in America orders them in bulk. It's hard to go a day without hearing the sound of Neuter. In the middle of its fame, we almost forgot that the product first made an appearance on Shark Tank. That's right. Alicia Long and Dane Turk entered the tank with their machine that lets you make your own nut-based milk drink at home. Alicia had practically grown up on nut-based milk, and when she met Dane, the two decided to live a healthy lifestyle together. This meant that nut milk was a staple in their home. But the problem was the time-consuming process to make it. Moreover, nut milk in grocery stores was unreasonably expensive. So, they took matters into their own hands and created Neuter. The problem wasn't the product or the idea behind it, it was the valuation. The couple valued their company at $10 million, seeking $500,000 for 5% of the company. The sharks enjoyed the product but hated the valuation, and the couple walked away empty-handed. Well, they reached post-show success, so that's what they got from the appearance. In 2023, Neuter made over $25 million. 3. Rocketbook. Jake Epstein and Joe LeMay believed they'd walk out of the tank with a teal for sure. In Season 8, the entrepreneurs walked in seeking $400,000 in exchange for 10% of the company, valuing it at over $4 million. Now, the product uploads anything you type into the notepad to your phone using the smartphone application. Ingenious, right? To sweeten the deal, they even show the sharks how the notebook gets wiped clean by simply placing it inside of a microwave. Wait, there's more. Jake and Joe had sold over $2.2 million worth by the time they entered the tank. You'd think this would have been a recipe for success, but the sharks didn't think Rocketbook was sustainable in any way. Barbara called Rocketbook a gimmick, and Kevin didn't want to hitch his star to a wagon he could only sell once. Mark was slightly interested, but ultimately backed out. Jake and Joe were, in so many words, deemed a failing duo by the sharks. Well, a few years on, and the sharks wished they'd taken that deal. After developing several new versions of the Rocketbook, including one that could be erased with a moist cloth, the company was acquired in December 2020 by pen maker BIC for $40 million. 4. Bedjet. Mark Armali came into the tank with more than just a great product. Mark had credentials that have put anyone to shame. A former NASA spacesuit primary life support system engineer and now a businessman. He came with the Bedjet, a climate-controlled mattress that can be controlled via your smartphone. Mark invited Lori and Mark Cuban to test it out. Robert joined in, and the 3 sharks agreed that it was a stellar product. Mark wanted $250,000 for a 10% equity stake, claiming to have an order of over $1 million from an Australian manufacturer on the table. A few of the sharks didn't like the fact that Bedjet was still relatively new, and Kevin believed that there was a disaster lurking around a smart mattress. Lori, meanwhile, was upset over the fact that Mark ignored her question to answer Kevin's instead, a pitch that went from good to bad to straight up ugly. So, where's Bedjet now? In December 2020, the company announced the sale of its 100,000th unit. They also introduced an aromatherapy kit designed to integrate with the Bedjet climate system. In 2022, Aramli was elected to the Newport, Rhode Island City Council. In 2023, it was reported that Bedjet had hit $5 million in sales. 5. Copa Di Vino. Copa Di Vino is a single-serving glass of wine filled with vino from James Martin's Oregon-based winery. Martin came up with the idea while he was vacationing in Europe and saw single-serve wine glasses. The idea is pretty interesting, right? Damon seemed to think so too, but not enough to make a deal when Martin first entered the tank in Season 2. Kevin, however, did make a deal, but he wanted 51% of the company. The entrepreneur wasn't willing to give up so much of his company and believed O'Leary was undervaluing Copa Di Vino. He bowed out of the deal, and the Sharks didn't think twice of it. That was until Martin returned for a second time, a year later, but left without a deal again. No, Martin has not returned since then, and he doesn't have to either. Because of the Shark Tank effect, Copa Di Vino sales skyrocketed. The company eventually reached a $70 million valuation before Martin sold it to Splash Beverage Group Inc. in 2020. Which one of these Shark Tank products have you seen around since their episode aired? Let us know in the comments.